to the Chronic Report. Today's topic is 23andMe and the fact that they filed bankruptcy last weekend. Welcome, Patrick. How are you today?
Hey, good morning. Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Well,
Excellent.
that 23andMe, we've been talking about this for the last year, when it first came up that it possibly was going to be sold. And now it sounds like some action is happening and it's all abuzz. Everyone's talking about it in the news. What do you think?
I think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal for the millions of people who are a part of this database. And, this database has these people's information. And, when it gets into the hands of a new company, what's going to happen to people's information and what's happened already with people's information?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, right now, it's estimated that 15 million people worldwide have gotten into the craze. And I remember when these things first came on the scene, they seemed like, this really wonderful thing. People were really excited about the possibility of finally knowing, what their ancestry is. I think that's the biggest draw. Most people curious
Yes.
about their family ancestry. What's
Mhm.
their family history, and what is
Right.
their ethnic makeup truly, and
Right.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And some of these DNA tests are really accurate. They can, they've combined historical information and tie it to your genetic information, and you can actually get a really general idea. Maybe you might have lost some information through the years on how your grandparents got here, but these DNA tests have made it possible for people to figure out when their relatives arrived. If people are into figuring out their family tree, they can, combine some of that information and fill in the gaps. And in many cases, I remember too, in the beginning, a lot of unfortunate things happened where people found out they weren't necessarily, adoption issues or mystery relatives that they didn't know exist.
Right.
It
Yeah.
exposed a lot of extramarital affairs. There was a lot of really, really interesting stuff that came out with these DNA tests. So in the beginning, a lot of people, I think, felt like, and maybe they were naive, but I know a lot of people who took these tests and they weren't quite thinking about that. They were looking at it more for the amusement factor or just the historical information.
Right.
And
Yeah.
now we've got all kinds of concerns that we all are facing and talking about right now that we really should be thinking about and taking in consideration as to whether or not there's a value to removing our data before the sale of 23andMe. The California Attorney General, Rob Bonta, made this very unusual plea earlier this week to the world, to the public, and particularly to the California residents, that they really should get their information off this database. And he's the person people are crediting with this reintroduction to talking about this, because like we said earlier, this has been around for a year. So what
Yeah.
are you thinking, Patrick, about these concerns? Do you feel that there's a real concern, or can we trust 20 about protecting our DNA? When you sign on, they promise that you're going to have protection, and it's as long as, it's indefinite. But there's a lot of people saying that that might not be true. What do you think?
Well, you just never know. I don't honestly know the agreement in regards to when you do a profile with 23andMe, and what the agreement is in regards to confidentiality and passing your information on to other companies or databases and so forth. I do know legally that the law enforcement cannot achieve your DNA information unless there's a warrant. So there is a way in, and if there's a way in with a warrant, there's a way in. And I'm sure money talks, but you never know what's going on behind the scenes. I think that there are, I should say, I wonder if there are other databases and other companies out there who have, people's information already.
Hmm.
I hope not, and I hope that they stick to their words, but you never know. I myself, I never did a 23andMe profile. I never did a strategy profile. I never did a DNA profile. I think my curiosity with doing a profile would be ancestry. I am curious about my ancestry. I do know a little bit about my ancestry, but it would be nice to know more. But I'm not that attached to it. In regard to understanding my genetic profile and my susceptibility to disease, you know, now I understand the cause of disease. So I don't need to know susceptibility. I understand that we're susceptible to anything and everything. However, for people who have unexplained phenomena or, health presentations, it's nice to have an answer. And, if there's a genetic presentation for, this type of health presentation or symptom or, something of that nature, then, having an answer through your genetic profile, whether that's the case or not the case, then it's just information. Then you have something tangible to work with. It doesn't mean that, oh, now I have this gene, so that's the answer to my question, and I'll just continue to go downhill, and now I know what it is, and until I die.
Hmm.
Or there's the person who understands that they have a particular type of genetic mutation, and then they try to find the cause of
Hmm.
the genetic mutation.
Hmm.
And generally, when people try to find the cause of one genetic mutation, they find out the cause of most, if not all, genetic mutations.
Yeah.
It's not rocket
No.
science. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought that up. I remember, when it was becoming more widely popular amongst people to use these tests to
Hmm.
research their health and genetic
Yeah.
predispositions, it actually became kind of a slippery slope. A lot of people
Right.
panicked. I also think a lot of people don't understand how, genes work, epigenetics.
Right.
And so a lot of
Right.
people had a lot of confusion about, you know, does this mean now I have to, in the case of BRCA gene, I have a friend who um,
Hmm.
found out she has that, and she
Hmm.
was one of the many women who, did took extreme measures after
Hmm.
taking a genetic test only and seeing that they
Hmm.
had this BRCA gene, which means you're predisposed to, not necessarily going to contract it, but predisposed to breast cancer or uterine cancers. And
Right.
she did the extreme thing and had things removed, even though there was no sign of cancer or any imminent signs that she was going to contract cancer. She did have
Yeah.
death in her family, but
Hmm.
she herself didn't. And
Hmm.
so I think a lot of people might have jumped the gun, had some panic
Hmm.
and concerns. And then, a lot of people, medical experts started questioning, whether or not there was truly a value, or maybe it wasn't necessarily wise for people to rely solely on these things as a way to do preventive health care.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to, kind of correct and emphasize something that I previously stated, and I want to make it clear that when I said the cause of a genetic mutation, we're born with approximately 24,000 genes, and then we have approximately 250 weak genes that we're born with, and those are our genetic mutations. So what I meant to say is the cause of our genetic mutation presentation.
Hmm.
So if we present with that weak gene,
Hmm.
with symptoms associated with that weak gene, that's what I meant by referring to what the cause, or trying to find the cause of triggering that weak gene to present physically.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the case of people who see these genes show up in their reports, if they take measures, health measures,
Yes. Yeah.
they can. there is a possibility that they can prevent these things from happening. It's
Absolutely.
not a death sentence to see these things
Oh,
necessarily.
yeah,
So that was kind of an interesting twist there for a lot of people. I think
definitely.
in other areas, concerns, and I think this is what
Hmm.
the Attorney General in California is referring to. There's a lot of things that, on the front end when you're signing up to take part of, with these DNA tests, they're not going to necessarily be on the forefront of your mind as a concern. You're just trusting as a customer that the company's got these things covered. But he's
Yeah.
concerned, and I believe others concerns
Hmm.
they have about what's getting ready to happen now is, 23andMe, is no longer going to necessarily be handling this
Hmm.
data. And so, you've got concerns about hackers. And within the last couple of years, I believe I had read that they had some issues with hackers.
Hmm.
And, you know, even though in their policy they, offered protection, um, it does happen. Hackers got in. And so now we have the concern of what happens now, depending on who, takes over. Um,
Yeah.
so there's just that. Cybersecurity is a thing right now for
Yeah.
everybody in all
Yeah.
fields, not just with.
Right. And you might wonder what can be done with your DNA profile. What can be done with your actual DNA.
Hmm.
What are the possibilities?
Yeah. The other thing is, another point that some who are, ringing the alarm bells are bringing up is that another thing is that the website says that to delete your data, 23andMe is saying, quote, if the company does change ownership in the future, your data will remain protected under the current 23andMe privacy policy. But what people may not be aware of is that this only stands until they or until a new entity comes in and buys it. Then they
Hmm.
have the ability to change the agreement, but you may or may not be aware of that. So it's a technicality. Up to this point, they promise indefinitely that it'll be protected, but that's as long as they're in control, and that's until someone else purchases it and they change that agreement. And once it's out of their hands, I don't know if there will be a way provided. Most people don't know if there will be a way provided for current customers to be able to be informed of any changes to that agreement. So that's another concern. You just don't know what's going to happen once someone else purchases it. These agreements might become moot, is really what the issue is.
I wonder if there's a clause with 23andMe um, in regards to the new owner adhering to the rules and
Right.
regulations of 23andMe. And, I'm looking at the terms of service
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Yeah.
And it states, and I'm not going to guarantee that this is accurate, but it does say an AI overview of Google states that there is no guarantee a new owner would adhere to the same policy
Right.
commitments. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's big, I think, because
it
pretty much,
is.
once a sale goes through, that's it. You have
Right.
lost control or any knowledge of what is happening
Hmm.
with your data, and
Right.
that's
Yeah,
pretty scary.
it is.
The other thing, and this is one that a lot of people have been talking about for quite a while, is, depending on who buys or gets access or acquires this information,
Hmm.
your privacy, not only your own personal privacy is in jeopardy, but because it's DNA we're talking about, there's a possibility your grandchildren or children or anyone who's genetically matched with you,
Right.
they're also in danger of their privacy and health and whatever information being at risk as well. And we're talking in regard to things like insurance coverage in the future. This is one that a lot of people talk about. Maybe somewhere down the line, we just can't anticipate, but perhaps if there's a predisposition to a certain kind of condition that runs in your family, you might get denied coverage, even if you're in perfect health at the time you
Mm-hmm.
apply, because of something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, there's other concerns of depending on, maybe another research entity or body accesses this. What are they going to do with the DNA data and or just the DNA in general? So there's also concerns about that. A lot of people are thinking really scary things, such as, what if a foreign entity buys it? And right now it's being used for something good, research for health or
Right.
whatnot, but
Mm-hmm.
anything could happen and it might be misused to create something we wouldn't want. That could create harm for not just the individual's whose DNA was taken, but everyone as a whole, the human
Right.
race. So there's just a lot
Yeah,
there to be concerned about.
there is. Yes. And I wonder if this was considered, and I think that it probably was considered, as 23andMe opened up this business.
Mhm. Well, the next question is, with all of these concerns, we've just highlighted a few. There are many, and there's a lot of
Totally.
news coverage out there
Mm-hmm.
for those
Mm-hmm.
who want to find out more. Um,
Right.
but I think the big thing is, with so many people urging people to consider deleting their DNA, not their DNA, deleting their account. Um, you know, the, if they haven't found information online on how to do it, we thought we would do a little walkthrough. Earlier this week, as soon as the California Attorney General made this announcement, a lot of people instantly hit the 23andMe website and ran into problems. And you
Mm-hmm.
found a lot of comments on some of the um, other media that have covered this, people writing in on the comments section and, saying
Right.
they were having problems, they couldn't get in, or,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't finding their information. What I
Right.
found out is there was such a swell of people immediately hitting the
Yeah.
website. They basically kind of crashed it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have since been on and checked, and the 23andMe website is back to up and running. And so you should be able to get in there if you want to get um, to delete your account.
Nice.
Once you get to the home page, what you're going to want to do, so this is the home page right now. This is what it looks like. You're going
Mm-hmm.
to want to find your username. That right here is where my initials are,
Mm-hmm.
is the username. You're going to click on this, open that up, and you're going to go right down to settings. And you're going to click on settings. My computer's a little slow because we got a lot going on right now, but there we
Yeah.
go. We got our new screen. And once you hit settings, you're going to want to scroll down to the bottom to a section that is titled 23andMe data. So we're going to quickly scroll down there. And it's near the bottom. So 23andMe data. And then you're going to click view. And once you get into view, you're going to see on this page a series of buttons. And you're going
Yes.
to just basically go through each of these buttons. And what this
Mm-hmm.
does is it's going to download your data into your computer. If
Okay.
you miss any of these buttons, that is a whole chunk of information that you're not going to be able to recover. So once you do this, once you delete your account, which is at the very bottom, the button to do that, you're never going to be able to access this again. This, in effect, is supposed to remove all information on you. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to click Report Summary. And when you go in there, it's going to, sorry for the slow, it's going to give you this print page. If you want to print your reports, this is the point where you're going to get to do it. If you also want to download this onto your computer, you're going to want to click on Save as PDF. So then you're going to click there. Otherwise, you'll have the option to just set it to your printer. and print it that way. And then when you're done, let's see here, you'll move on. So you're going to want to go back to the original page. Let's see here. There we go. And then you're going to move on down this list. So then the next section is you're going to download your composite data. You're going to click on that. And you will see that it goes right up into your download area, and it'll be saved. So you just move on to the next section after you see it go in there. And then you're going to do your download tree data. I believe it's going to do the same thing for this section here. It might not let me do it again because I've already done this earlier.
Oh, okay.
So what it'll do is, I believe, if I remember correctly, when you click on it, you'll get another download link up in your download section.
Gotcha.
And so you're just going to keep doing this, download raw data. And then what's going to happen is when you're in this, you're going to, let's see here, it might be gone. Yes, it is, because I've already done it. So what you're going to get is like a page with a bunch of check marks for the different types of genotyping data you want. Make sure you hit every box. If you don't hit them all, you will not get that data. So you just want to be very thorough as you go through this and make sure you tick all those boxes to ensure you get all the information you're looking for. Then you're going to be doing, let's see, so then you're going to sign an agreement here. I've already done that, but what you're going to do is you're going to click this, and this will be sent to you in 2 to 3 weeks is what the message I got. And this is further genotype data that they're giving you. And it's a fairly large report, and it should be coming to you electronically in 2 to 3 weeks. And then you're going to go down to the bottom. After you get all your information for yourself to save, and then you're going to read all the warnings very carefully. And it gives you all the different steps that you want to take if there's any kind of issue. I would recommend printing this page so that you have that information, because once you hit the delete, it's gone. So you want to make sure you have that. So make sure you print or make a copy, cut and paste copy of that, so you have that information for yourself. You might even want to like click on the privacy statement and that sort of thing to ensure you have access to that information. Okay. So then at the very bottom, you hit permanently delete, and then it's gone forever. And that's it. And it should be, in theory, gone. And let's talk a little bit about that, because I say in theory for a reason. In my opinion, once you have done something like this, it's out there. And really, I feel like doing this is important. You definitely want to get your information off the site, and you hope that it is removed. But the main thing I always think about is the DNA is out there, that sample's out there. And, there's no assurance that that genetic material has been destroyed or will be destroyed. And I believe this is where, the Attorney General of California is coming from, where he says, in addition to taking the measures to take your information off this site, he's encouraging everyone to directly contact 23andMe and their state's attorney generals to and ask for this, to assure that the genetic material is destroyed. Certain states, like the state of California, actually has something in its books that protects people with any kind of information that has anything to do with business transactions. And this falls under that for the state of California. And so residents of California are protected, and they have a legal right to have their stuff destroyed if they ask for it, or for them to have access to the information. It has to be given back to them. The companies must comply. it's different state by state. And if you aren't sure what your state's laws say, I strongly encourage people to contact their state's attorney general and find out what the state law is regarding a situation like this. So that's what we have today. Hopefully, this was helpful. Is there anything else you want to add, Patrick?
I think this is great, Nicole, and I think that you've made this very clear in terms of how to download all of your information so you continue to have it, and how to delete the account.
Well, thank you very much, Patrick, for joining me today. And
Thank
thank
you.
you, all of you out there, for joining us today. And we'll see you next
Yes.
time.
Okie doke.